So a limit with an absolute value. Well, the x is going to 0, and the absolute value kind of does something strange at 0. So I'm going to look at the one-sided limits to see if they agree. If they agree, then I will have my overall limit, and if not, then the overall limit does not exist. Okay, x goes to 0 plus first, why not? Of absolute value of x over x. Okay, now x is going to 0 plus. Okay, what you could do if you want, you could just write under here x is bigger than 0. That's what 0 plus means. So if x is bigger than 0, then the absolute value of x is just x itself, right? You know, if you have absolute value of 17, that is just 17. Absolute value of pi squared is just pi squared. Okay, if absolute value gets a negative number, then it does something different. But for a positive number, absolute value does nothing. Okay, now I've dealt with my absolute value. So I can see that limit is going to be a limit of just 1. Okay, limit of 1 is, of course, just 1. Okay, what does 1 approach as x approaches 0 plus? Well, it approaches 1. It does not depend on x. Okay, how about the other limit here? The other one-sided limit. X goes to 0 minus over x. Okay, now it's different. X is less than 0 now. So what does absolute value do to a negative number? Well, it makes it positive, right? So what's that? So absolute value of negative 3, let's say. That is, well, it's 3. But how does it do that? How does that happen? Magic? No. We're going to have absolute value do something specific. So absolute value, when it receives a negative number, we're going to say it sticks another negative in front. Okay, that's how it's going to achieve its goal. Okay, absolute value, to get plus 3 here, it's going to stick an extra negative in front to get where it wants to be. Okay, so we'll apply that idea down here. We get lim, so we get negative x on top. Negative x, there we go. Now this negative here is serving the same role as this negative up here. So we get limit of negative 1, which is, of course, negative 1. Okay, what happened? My one-sided limits didn't exist. So therefore, this guy is a big DNE. Okay, it does not exist. So let's draw a picture here. Now, if you look at absolute value of x, like we just said, it's going to be x. It's going to have no change to x if it receives a positive number of 0. And it's going to give me negative x if x is less than 0. So this is a broken or stepwise function. How do you graph that? Well, you look at, first of all, this guy. So for x is bigger than 0, I'm going to sketch y is equal to x, so the diagonal line. So that's So over here is where you have x is bigger than 0. And there, I'm going to just draw the diagonal line. That's y equals x. And then for x is less than 0, I'm going to draw this other diagonal line. Negative x goes like this, right? So we should put arrows to indicate these continue. So that'd be the picture of absolute value of x. Now, if I look at the picture for absolute value of x over x, well, what you get is x over x, which is just 1 if x is bigger than or equal to 0, and negative x over x, which is negative 1 if x is less than 0. Oops, I have an issue here. I've made a mistake. You can't include 0 here, right? I can't include 0 here because 0 over 0 is not defined. So I should make an adjustment here. It should be, so it's a little mistake there. That should be just x bigger than 0. And then for x equals 0, this guy does not exist. Sorry about that. All right, so here's the function I'm trying to get a picture of. So what does it look like? Well, it's going to be, for x is bigger than 0, it's going to be just this flat line 1. So let's put 1 up here, put minus 1 down here. So for x is bigger than 0, so over here, you get that horizontal line. That is not a horizontal line. I'll try to one more time to get it flat here. Oops, okay, one more time. Okay, that's as good as it's going to be. So for x is bigger than 0, you just have the line y equals 1. For x is less than 0, for x is less than 0, you have the horizontal line y equals negative 1. So you get this guy down here. Okay, horizontal line. Jordan, you can do it. Good enough. So there you go. There's my function. Label that. Let's say f of x is absolute value of x over x. Okay, so from this picture, we can clearly see that the right-hand limit and the left-hand limit do not agree. So therefore, limit x goes to 0 of this funny quotient does not exist.